Hey, so this is going to be a video on kind of housekeeping, a day in the life of a housekeeper, what my training was like. Yeah, so I'm basically going to talk through training, and what I got up to on a day-to-day basis, and something that I'll explain a bit later that happened, because I didn't enjoy my time as a housekeeper as much as I thought I would, so I'll explain that a bit later. Okay, so to start off with training, you have the same 3 orientation things as everybody else. Everybody has these. So you have day 1, which is like housing stuff, day 2, which is kind of like immigration, more housing stuff, general pre-work stuff, and then day 3 is traditions. Everybody has those. And then it's after traditions that's when everybody disperses and starts their different work locations, job training. So the first thing I got, and I can't remember when I got this. Actually no, I won't show you that yet because I didn't actually get it. So I've got a schedule in front of me which I'll show you at the time of the day which I got it. So my first day that I had, just bear with me with the, okay, so the first day that I had was, I had a housekeeping core class, and I thought I had a little booklet, which I don't have anymore. Okay, well I did have a little booklet. You get a little booklet that you can write stuff in, kind of like your traditions one. Yeah, I don't have that anymore. Okay, so I had a housekeeping core class, and that was at Disney University, and that's basically learning all the do's and don'ts of being a housekeeper. You watch a presentation, you go through some scenarios, and there'll be all housekeepers in the same room with you, but they'll be at different work locations, but everybody from housekeeping that has to train will be training at the same time. They might not all be CPs. I know there was only, I think, 3 or 4 of us that were actually college programme. The rest were either going into full-time or part-time housekeeping. So yeah, and they give us, so you'll give you certain scenarios, like we were given the scenario of what happens if you find an unattended child, when you go into one of your rooms, unauthorised pets or animals. We got told a hysterical story of when they went into a room to find a cow, and somehow the funniest part of the story is the fact that it wasn't on the first floor. So yeah, they go through scenarios like that. Obviously that's really extreme and you probably won't bump into a cow, but of what happens if, say, you find someone's brought their dog with them or a hamster or something like that. Yeah, you basically get told, kind of like the safety begins with me, you'll get it hammered into you in this session that you just have to expect anything and everything. So yeah, then in the second part of that, although it's really ridiculous because you get told to come in professional attire to this, and then you have to go and test out making beds and cleaning bathrooms, so you're working with chemicals, and although you have gloves and things like that, there's nothing to stop the kind of chemicals going on the professional attire you're wearing. So just bear that in mind when you go down to that class, not to wear anything that's kind of like really restricting, because you will be kind of maybe on your hands and knees trying to make the beds, trying to clean the bathtubs. In Disney University they have like a mock Disney room, and it has all the different size beds in it and things like that, so you'll get to test out making that, and that's kind of your first bit of training that you'll have as an actual housekeeper. Okay, so the next day was at Port Orleans Car Services building, and this was a location training. So I went in and there was no other housekeepers, but there was all other cast members that would be working at Port Orleans. So my roommate Abby was there and she was working in quick service food and beverage. There was people that were going to be working at the bars by the pool. There was greeters that were going to be near the front desk. So that is basically just a general learning about the locations. You get this. Ooh, everything is falling out my journal. Oh dear. Nice. That's what happens when you have a really big journal. You get given this. So that was the work training schedule that I got given. So we're on the 11th of May at the moment. So I had a class and that was going to take place from 8:30 till 3:30. It was basically just location. We got given where is it? This little piece of paper. And you had to fill it out through the kind of presentations that you got. We had a manager come in to see us who happened to be the housekeeping manager, who is pretty awesome. If it's the same guy that was there when I was there, he was awesome. You learn about how many rooms, because it's split into two, my resort, so you learn how many rooms were in each section, what dining facilities they had, what merchandise facilities, what recreation. And then obviously you learn about the 4 keys again, and safety begins with me. And just in case you didn't know anything about Disney, you also had to write down things about the general Disney area. So that was day 2. I got this little picture. This was the class. It was called All Jazzed Up, and we got a little picture of our little team. And they printed that out and gave it to us. So yeah, we got that, and that was really good fun. They actually took us around both resorts. We got to have a walk around, got to orientate ourselves where everything was. That was kind of more for anybody that didn't have a fixed spot, or would have a lot of guest interaction and would need to know where everything in the kind of resort was. Housekeeping, sometimes you'll have guests bump into you and they'll ask you certain things, but I'd say it would be more to do with the actual outside of the resort area that they're asking. So things like extra magic hours, which park would be the quietest to go to, because you're meant to know stuff like that. So I actually used to check which ones had extra magic hours in the evenings before I actually went into work in the morning, so I knew which parks had the extra magic hours. Things like which one's quietest. Obviously Magic Kingdom is always going to be the busiest park, always. So you kind of just have to give your best opinion, and just try and promote a park with certain rides. So if they don't know Disney very well, you could say, well, Hollywood Studios has these sort of rides, and Animal Kingdom has the safari. Just try and promote another park if you don't actually necessarily know which one's going to be the quietest. You can say, I don't know, but don't just leave it at I don't know. Try and kind of expand so it doesn't make it seem like you don't know anything. But yeah. And then after that you go straight in to on-the-job training, which is literally you are housekeeping, but you work alongside somebody, so you're not on your own. I had day 1, my trainer, she was Spanish. I don't know what other resorts are like, but I know that in my resort there was a lot of people speaking Spanish and Haitian, and some of the people from Haiti didn't speak English, if any at all. The Spanish know more. My trainer, she could speak English, but sometimes I'd say some words, kind of if I kind of slanged something or I shortened a word down, she wouldn't know what I'd mean. I'd find myself speaking quite slowly, and looking at a very confused face most of the time. But apart from that, she was really, really good fun. I absolutely loved her. So day one, I literally just watched. Where I could, I helped. I just tried to get into it as straight as possible. There's no point in just following around your trainer all day and just watching what they're doing. You might as well just get stuck into it, because you've got someone there watching what you're doing, and if you do something wrong or not correct, then they can show you straight away. So yeah, that's what you do on day one. You'll have a little cart, I would say, will come up to about here on you, and that will have everything that you need in it. You have sheets, you have towels, hand towels, flannels, toilet rolls, tissues, shampoos, amenities, things like that. You'll have all of that in your little cart, so you don't have to keep going back to the laundry room, linen rooms, to go and get all the different things that you need. They're just on your carts. So yeah, you learn that all in day one. I found the car services building really hard. No one came to see me straight away. On my first day I did get introduced to the whole of like, if you're doing morning shifts, everyone usually has like a break room. This break room was really big. I'd say probably filled with maybe just under 100 cast members in housekeeping. Yeah, maybe filled with that. And the manager introduced me to everybody, so they knew who I was. But up until that point, I was kind of, I didn't even know that the break room existed. I didn't get told where to go, so I just kind of lingered around and hoped that someone would come and find me, which they did. But, you know, just if you see somebody that's not in the same costume as you and they look like a manager, go and ask. If they're going to be your manager, then, you know, you can introduce yourself. If they're not, they'll direct you in the right kind of way to whoever you need to go and speak to, which is basically what I did. Second day, this was my second on the job training, so you have 2 of these, and you go out with your trainer, but throughout the day you'll get to do different things. Sometimes your trainer will show you how to make different towel animals. The bog standard one for like checkout room would be the big towel made into a circle, and then you'd have 2 little circles to make a Mickey, and you'd leave that on the bed. So you'll do things like that, but then come the end of the day you'll probably have your manager come and see you, and then they'll assign you like a checkout room or an occupied room or something, and you'll have to go off and do that yourself, and then they'll come back and they'll check the room for you, as kind of like a mini assessment to make sure that you know what you're doing, because the next day is when you're left on your own, and you get your own assignment board. So yeah, that's basically your on-the-job training, is basically just following a trainer around. Yeah. And then after that you go straight into your what they call ramp up, which is that you start on 8 rooms and then they ramp it up by 2. So I'll show you the schedule again. So you can see where it says on the 14th even, sorry, that was the first day of my ramp up. So I started at 8 and I'd finish at 4:30, and I had 8 rooms. Obviously I finished in that time, and I had a really nice manager. As soon as I finished, I just needed to go and find her. She checked over my rooms, she signed it off, I handed in my assignment sheet, and I was just allowed to go and sit back at the car services building in the canteen, which was really good. But unfortunately, until you've been there, I think it's 90 days, you can't clock out early, whereas other full-time cast members and CPs that have been there for 90 days, they can clock out at 3:30 if they've finished early. So you'll find quite a lot of housekeepers will like push themselves to be able to finish an hour early, but they'll still get paid for that final hour as well. Yeah, so that'll be the 8 bedrooms. I'll show you an assignment sheet if I have one, which I think I do. Okay, so that's all. Oh. Okay, so this is what an assignment sheet looks like. You'll get given one of these each morning. All the managers, depending on where you're working and how many buildings there is, there'll be so many managers, and they will come in the morning to the break room and they'll hand out these sheets. Just down here, these are the room numbers. I've circled them when I finish them. You have pink, which is occupied. If it's clear like this, pink is linen change, sorry. And then you have the clear, which is an occupied room. So sometimes you'll knock on that first thing in the morning, 8:30, they're not even up. So you might have to come back for that. And then there's also blue, I want to say. Maybe. Blue? Yeah, blue. Which means it's a checkout, which means it's a full clean. So with occupied rooms, you clean around the stuff that's there, and you know it's kiddie stuff, so it's lots of toys. If you can't hoover the floor, you know, you hoover the best you can. It's empty the rubbish, clean the sinks, clean the baths, and then make the beds. Again, you're kind of told not to touch anything that you don't have to. If there's electronics on the bed, you know, consult your manager on what to do with that, because we were told not to touch anything, because obviously if anything gets broken, then it's on our heads if anything happens. So yeah, occupied linen change, that's all the same things as occupied, but you have to change the sheets on the beds, and that happens every 3 days. So if someone's there for a week, they'll obviously have their linens changed twice. And then checkout is literally everything is cleaned like vigorously, to make sure that it's pristine for when the next guest comes. So that's like sheets changing. If comforters are dirty, then they need to be cleaned as well, and you have to put those in the bags, and then you have to ring through to base or dispatch to come and bring you another one. You basically get rid of anything that's left. You have to check the fridge and clean the fridge, and you have to clean inside the drawers, make sure all the same leaflets and information sheets are there, and make sure the phone and all the desk area is clean. And yeah, that's basically everything that you have to do. You know, sometimes you'll have nice guests that leave you tips, and it's down to the manager you have as to whether you're allowed to keep them. I was. Sometimes I was making like an extra $30 a day, but some days I'd go in and get maybe $2, some days I'd go in and get nothing. So it's very hit and miss, but you know, it's nice for the extra little bit of cash. Personally, with tips, I used to go back to car services because I had a really nice manager who would let me, to start off with, I was in Riverside at Port Orleans, and she was a really nice manager, and she used to let me go at 3:30 when everyone else did, and just let me sit in the car services building, in the canteen where there was a TV, and I used to just get and sit to watch that. And any tips I'd made through the day, I used to buy myself a drink and a biscuit, and I just used to sit and eat that. But then when I moved over to French Quarter, and I actually outrightly said that I used to be let go at 3:30 if I was finished and just sit at the car services building. But I actually made friends with my managers over there, so if I finished early, then I used to sit in the manager's office out of choice, and sit and talk to them, because they were really, really nice, and I much prefer to do that. So I used to bring something with me. Quite often in housekeeping, I didn't really have time to stop to have my lunch. Sometimes that was out of choice, because I wanted to finish early and be able to sit down at 3:30 for an hour before leaving, and eat my lunch. Depending on the board that you get, and by board I mean that assignment sheet, depends on how you feel about stopping for lunch, because sometimes you can have a really hectic board and you don't know if you're going to get finished in time for 4:30. So sometimes it's easier to work through lunch, finish at say 3:30, 4 o'clock, and know that you're done. Whereas you could stop for lunch, have some lunch, and then be pushing to finish for 4:30. and some of the house persons that have the little cargo things that will take you back to class services, sometimes they won't wait for you. So, you know, I'd have my backpack actually on my car as I was going round, and I used to like hide it behind something so it wasn't like clearly on show, or I could just leave it in the linen room that was nearest to me, and I could just go back to it. But I used to take kind of snacky things, crackers, wafer biscuits, things that I could just pick up and just have one. If I decided that I got really hungry, then I could stop. But quite often I'd just be kind of putting a cracker in my mouth and I'd kind of get going. And that was kind of the easiest way to do it, and that was okay. I was fine with that. So yeah, it really depends on the person as to whether you feel like you want to stop, and things like that. But yeah, I think looking back on it now, you know, it was pretty good. You know, it's hard work, but you know, you get paid decent in, you know, within terms of college programme wages. You know, you get extra tips if, you know, you left them. Sometimes you'll be given a section, so it means you'll have the same rooms all the time while you're there, which means that you can actually, you know, go out your way to make like special touches that will gain you the extra tips, whereas you might not want to do that, say if you're a floater, and you have different rooms each day, because it means that somebody else is going to get the tip that maybe you've earned. So it depends on how you feel as to what you do. I used to kind of just make the bog standard like elephant special touches or Mickey Mouse ones. The dog ones were quite easy to make. But yeah, that's that one. I'll show you some of the pictures that I've got. So this is the work page that I've got in my photo book. So you can kind of see what my costume was like. You know, I didn't get particularly hot. All the special touches I made one day. So more special touches. More special touches. But yeah, I actually have some special touches to show you. This is my little doggy. And I was the first person in Port Orleans to make the little hat. And I found a way to make a premium Mickey bar, so I made those special touches. And I used to make like a load of these if I finished really early. Then I'd sit and make a load of these and let some of the other housekeepers take them. This is my little princess turtle. And it's a little penguin with her Minnie Mouse ears on. So yeah, you kind of pick up on how to make those. You don't actually have a specific class on tile animals, which I think you should, but you don't. But yeah, so that's kind of that. I think my experience, honestly, I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would, but I don't want to put off anybody that's got a housekeeping role and scare them into thinking that they're really not going to enjoy it. I don't think that anybody should watch a video on YouTube, see somebody's experience and get an expectation, either a low or high one, because you can only end up being disappointed. So this is only really for somebody that's doing housekeeping just to get an insight into what they might be doing, but not to gain any expectations, because my experience, I didn't enjoy it. Housekeeping, for me, the only reason I stayed is because I wanted to go back this year and be a character performer, and I knew if I self-termed I wasn't allowed to work for the company for 5 years, which would mean that I couldn't apply this year, so I only stuck it out because of that. So if you don't have something that's kind of firing you to be determined, then, you know, you might want to self-term. But again, I don't want to, you know, put thoughts into people's heads into thinking that they're already going to self-term before they even get there. You know, the tile animals are fun. Towards the end of the programme was when I actually really started to enjoy myself, because I started out not knowing anybody. You know, the majority of people that I was working with didn't even speak my language, and then it wasn't until probably, I'd say, about June time, because I went in May, in about June, halfway through June time, that I realised that there was a whole group of Americans, kind of my age. So then I kind of I think I made friends with one of them one day when he was being a house person in my building, and he actually stopped and took the time to speak to me. He helped me out with a couple of my rooms, and he took me out to go for lunch, so I didn't have to sit in the living room. And he made sure that, you know, I'd got enough of my linen changes done that I wasn't going to be pushed for time when I got back. So when I met him, I actually then started becoming friends with everybody else, and you know, I've made friends for life with some of them. They're still there, and I'm going to be going to visit them next time I'm there, when I'm in June. So, you know, if you make friends with people that are, you know, CPs or either our age or round about our age, you know, it's pretty good. And you know, as like I say, you get tips, so you know, not many other roles get that. I don't think there's any CP roles that get that. I certainly enjoyed the extra bit of cash. If you really don't enjoy it, what I did is that I actually spoke to one of my managers one day, and yeah, I spoke to one of my managers and just said that I really wasn't enjoying it, explained exactly what I was feeling, explaining that the only reason I was staying was because I wanted to come back next year, but I really wasn't enjoying it, and I was still trying to pursue a role change, but I will just let you know now, it's not a possibility. For ICPs, we're really not there long enough for them to be able to change you and train you in another role. So it's really just not possible. Just, you know, you just need to stick housekeeping out. It's only a couple of months, and it looks good on your CV. But once speaking to my manager, she was really nice, and she was actually due to leave. So I actually thought that I wasn't going to get anything from that because, well, I'd spoken to a manager that was leaving, so she couldn't do anything about it. But she actually passed the message along to another manager who sorted out something for me, and I actually became and trained as a runner. It was still under the housekeeping kind of role area. I was still in the same costume, still in the same resort, but just doing a different job. So, you know, if it does become a real issue for you and you really don't like housekeeping, then you can always ask to be cross-trained, which means that they'll train you up as a runner. You get to drive a little Pargo around, you get a radio, and you respond to guest and housekeepers' calls for different things. It is stressful. I don't think it's as relaxed as housekeeping, because with housekeeping you can kind of work at your own pace. You can go as slow or as fast as you want to. You can stop when you want to. With a runner, you don't. It's a bit unpredictable. I mean, like sometimes I'd go in the morning, I'd have a call straight on my radio as soon as I left the break room and have to go, and I wouldn't have stopped until lunchtime. That is the only thing with runner, you do get a fixed hour lunch. So at least you know you can stop for an hour. But sometimes you wouldn't stop all day. I think my busiest day was that I had 72 calls in one day. That was quite a lot. I didn't stop. I constantly had a massive big list of calls going, of things that I had to respond to. You had to drive back to the car services building sometimes. If you had to do a refrigerator call, they are the worst because they're so heavy and you have to carry them, or you can get the little kind of wheelie things, but sometimes it's just not worth it to put it on there. Sometimes it's easier just to carry them, but they are the worst. But that is something that's a possibility that you can do. Or there is house person, but I didn't really see the interest in that. Runner seemed like such more fun, especially when I knew one of my friends had been cross-trained as it and they absolutely loved it. So that was my next thing. I got trained as a runner and I really enjoyed my last 2 months of housekeeping runner malarkey because of that. Although as a runner you don't get tips unless you're given them by a guest. So, but I didn't really care, to be honest. I did kind of get put back in housekeeping sometimes. I remember on my very, very last day of working, my absolute best manager ever, she got me the best board. I still had 17 rooms, but they were all just unoccupied. So I thought I was going to have a really easy day, but then it turned out that they had some ADOs, which is approved day off. So you can actually go into work, 8 o'clock, they'd have ADOs available, you can ask for them and you can just get sent home. You don't get paid for the day, but you can go into the parks, whereas if you call in sick, you can't go into the parks. But yeah, overall, you know, looking back on it, it was alright. I enjoyed the fact that I made friends there, and I certainly don't regret sticking it out, because, you know, I've got the role that I really wanted this year, for the sake of sticking out cleaning rooms. It was totally worth it. So yeah, I think it's just a case of you just have to grin and bear it sometimes. Some days can be, you know, really rubbish, but other days can just make your day. One completely magic moment I did have, and this was alongside one of my friends called Rebecca. She was an ICP as well, and she started in June. I kind of, you know, really showed her the ropes, made sure that she felt comfortable, because I didn't have anyone that did that for me. So from day one she had somebody there for her, and she had the same trainer as me as well, so that made things easier. But yeah, one magic moment that we had was that she had the same set of rooms every day. And when I'd been trained as a runner, there was quite a lot of times when I didn't have any calls, so I'd go and sit in the manager's office, and I'd sit and just make special touches until I got another call through. And then obviously I'd go off and do it, I'd come back. If I didn't have any more calls, then, you know, I'd sit down and make special touches. And she found out that it was one of the little girls' birthdays in one of her rooms, and that she really, really liked Shrek. So we made, well, I made, with my manager, we made a dog and a cake towel animal and dog towel animal. I put Shrek ears on the dogs, and I put Shrek ears on the cake, and we went and delivered it to her room, and she really, really loved it. So that things like that just make it all worthwhile. And sometimes the guests are really inventive with the way they give you the tips. They'll give you some really like pretty looking envelopes. The children will have coloured you in pictures. You know, they'll write little messages to you. Sometimes they'll put it in amongst some of their toys with a little message. So yeah, it's really worth it, honestly. I enjoyed it. I didn't think I did at the time, but, you know, it was alright. But as I said, I don't want to influence anybody into thinking that they're going to have a rubbish time. I don't want anyone to get any expectations from what I've said, nor do I want them to watch anybody else's videos on YouTube. If they've had a rubbish time, then go in thinking that it's going to be rubbish before it's even started, because if you have a negative outlook on it, you're already going to have a rubbish time because you think it's going to be rubbish. So really go in with the most positive attitude you can, and just make the most of everything. I mean, if nothing else, you can get into the parks for free whenever you want, and you have standard hours. You know that every shift you have is 8 until 4:30, and I can't express how good that is, because quite a lot of my friends would sometimes be working morning shifts and evening shifts, and they wouldn't know when they were working. At least I knew every single day that I was going to be working. I was going to be working till 8 till 4:30, and that was the best thing about it. And, you know, I had 2 days off a week. I got to do everything that I wanted to do. So yeah, it was fine. But yeah, I really don't want anyone to gain any expectations. I want everyone to go in with a positive attitude for this. And I hope this has helped all future housekeepers out there. And if you've got any questions, again, as always, post them down below. I'll answer them. If you've got any requests for videos, again, I'm quite happy to do those too. So, thank you.